The alarm hit before I even opened my eyes. 3 short pulses, then silence, then one long pulse that meant the enemy had crossed the outer marker. My hand found the edge of the bunk in the dark, and my body was already moving before my mind caught up. 6 years of this had taught me one thing above all else. The first 10 seconds after that sound decide everything that follows. I am Daniel Cole. On my home station, the neighbors know me as a quiet man who forgets to take out the recycling and hums off-key while cooking dinner. Out here, on the edge of the Ashwell corridor, I am something else. I am the reason an entire fleet changes its plans the moment my name appears on their screens. That morning, 3 enemy cruisers had slipped past our early sensors, using a drift pattern nobody on my crew had seen before. My second-in-command, a sharp young officer named Peter Grant, met me at the corridor hatch with a data pad already glowing in his hand. "They are running silent," he said, "no engine signature. We only caught them because Nora spotted a heat shadow on the long-range scan." Nora Hill was our scanner operator, barely 2 years out of training, but she had the kind of eyes that noticed what machines missed. I nodded at her through the open door of the control deck, and she gave me a tight, nervous smile. 3 ships is not an accident," I said. 3 ships moving silent through a corridor we control is a message. Someone wants to see how fast we notice. Peter frowned. "Do we pull back and report it, or do we move?" There was no time to report it. Reporting meant waiting for approval from people 4 jumps away who had never once flown through this corridor. By the time headquarters replied, the message would already be finished. And it would not be a message anymore. It would be a loss. "We move," I said. "Quiet exit, minimal power. Same trick they are using. If they want to test how fast we notice, we are going to answer that question ourselves." The corridor around Ashwell was a maze of drifting cargo shells, old mining rigs, and a slow-moving asteroid belt that had been mapped so many times that everyone assumed there were no more secrets left in it. That assumption was exactly why I loved it. A place everyone thinks they understand completely is the safest place in the galaxy to hide something new. We slipped our own ship, a modest patrol vessel called the Halcyon Drift, into the shadow of a dead mining rig. Peter cut our main engine to a whisper. Nora kept her eyes locked on the scan feed, calling out distances in a low, steady voice. 4,000 kilometers, 3,600, they are turning. "Turning toward us, or turning away?" I asked. "Toward," she said, and her voice cracked just slightly on that single word. I felt the old calm settle over me, the one my wife back home would never recognize, the one my daughter has never seen on my face even once. It is not the calm of someone who is not afraid. It is the calm of someone who has decided fear is not useful right now and can be dealt with later. "Peter, cut all but life support. Nora, feed me a live overlay of their formation. If they are hunting us the old way, they will spread out to box us in. If they are hunting us the new way, they will bunch together and try to force us into a corridor with no second exit." They bunched together. That told me everything. This was not a random patrol. This was a trained unit, testing a new tactic against a target they believed would react the old way, the predictable way, the way every textbook said a defending ship should react. I had read every one of those textbooks. I had also read what happens to units that trust textbooks too completely. "Nora, give me full power the second I say the word, not before." "Peter, plot a course straight through the gap in their formation, not around it." "Straight through," he repeated, and I heard the disbelief in his voice, though to his credit he did not argue. "Straight through," I confirmed. "They expect us to run around them, using the wide arc every training manual recommends. That arc takes 14 seconds longer than a straight line through the gap they left open by accident when they bunched up. 14 seconds is a lifetime out here." The 3 enemy ships closed the distance, confident, steady, patient in that way, that told me their commander believed patience was a virtue that always paid off. I understood their doctrine. I had studied it for years. They believed that strength was shown by not needing to rush, by proving you could outweight any opponent. It was a strong belief, and it had won them many fights against enemies who thought the same way they did. I did not think the same way they did. "Now," I said. Peter slammed power into the engines, and the Halcyon Drift shot forward through the narrow gap in their formation, so close that our hull sensors screamed warnings about proximity to their lead cruiser. For 3 full seconds we were inside their formation, close enough to see the shape of their ship without any instrument at all, just the naked eye through the front viewport. Then we were through, out the other side, already turning hard toward the asteroid field where our own support ships waited in ambush. They scrambled. I could hear it in the panic of their communication chatter, that our systems picked up and translated in real time, choppy and urgent where it had been calm moments before. Their formation broke apart, as each ship tried to reverse course and follow us. and in breaking apart, they exposed themselves exactly the way I needed them to. Our support ships did their work quickly and without excess. This was never about destroying everything in sight. My goal from the very first moment was to disable, to confuse, to make an enemy commander doubt every plan his training had ever given him. Within 4 minutes, all 3 cruisers had lost engine power and were drifting. Harmless, easy to secure, easy to negotiate with once headquarters caught up with what had already happened. Nora let out a long breath through her teeth. Peter turned to look at me, his face pale but his eyes bright with something between fear and admiration. "How did you know they would bunch up?" he asked. "Because they trusted their doctrine more than they trusted the moment in front of them," I said. "That is the mistake every strong force eventually makes. They start following the plan instead of watching the enemy who is actually there." That night, back on the Halcyon Drift, I sat alone in the small crew quarters and opened a message from home. My daughter, Mira, had sent a short video of herself practicing a song for her school recital, her voice a little off-key and exactly the way mine always is. She waved at the camera at the end and said she missed me and asked when I was coming home. I watched it 4 times before I answered. When I finally did, I did not mention the 3 cruisers, or the 14 seconds, or the gap in their formation. I told her she sounded wonderful, and that I could not wait to hear her sing in person, and that I loved her more than she could imagine. Both of those messages, the strategy and the love, came from the same man, at the same table, within the same hour. I have never understood why people find that strange. The following weeks brought no peace. Word had spread quickly through the enemy ranks about what had happened in the corridor, and instead of frightening them into caution, it seemed to draw their attention even more sharply toward me. A senior commander named Rowan Ashcombe requested a formal meeting through a neutral channel, something almost unheard of between our 2 sides at that stage of the conflict. Peter thought it was a trap. Nora thought it was curiosity. I thought it was something else entirely. I thought it was fear wearing the mask of professional courtesy. I met Rowan aboard a neutral station, a quiet gray structure orbiting a dead moon that belonged to neither side. He was tall, with pale eyes and a manner so controlled it felt almost mechanical. He studied me for a long moment before speaking, as though trying to match the man in front of him with whatever picture his intelligence reports had built. "You do not fight the way we expect," he said finally. "Every calculation we make assumes a rational continuation of past behavior. You break that assumption on purpose." "I do," I said. "Because the moment an enemy believes they understand exactly how I will respond, they have already won half the fight without firing a single shot. I choose not to give them that advantage." Rowan considered this in silence. Then he asked a question that surprised me, one that had nothing to do with tactics or corridors or cruisers. "Do you have a family?" he asked. "I do," I said. "A wife, a daughter, and a son, who still believes I am simply away on long business trips." He studied my face again, searching for something, some crack in what he had built me into inside his own mind. I understood the search perfectly, because I had done the same thing to him, and to every commander like him for years. It is hard to fight someone you cannot fully picture. It is even harder when that picture refuses to stay simple. "I am not a monster at home," I told him, "and I am not a soft man out here. I am the same person in both places. The gentleness does not disappear when the fighting starts, and the discipline does not disappear when I walk through my own front door. People assume a person must choose one face and wear it always. I never agreed to that assumption, and I never will." Rowan did not answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its careful edge. "Then we have been fighting the wrong kind of war against you," he said. "We have been trying to predict a man who does not operate from a single fixed nature. That is why nothing we plan against you succeeds the way it should." I told him the truth, plainly, without any pride in it. Every strong system eventually meets someone or something that does not fit its assumptions. When that happens, the system either adapts or it breaks. I am simply the reason yours has had to adapt so many times. We did not become friends that day, and the larger conflict did not end because of one conversation on a quiet station. But something shifted after that meeting. Reports from the corridor grew less aggressive. Patrols on both sides grew more cautious, more careful, less willing to test boundaries that had already proven costly to test. 2 months later, the ceasefire talks began in earnest, and this time I was not called in to fight. I was called in to sit at the table and explain, calmly, how a peace could be built that did not depend on either side pretending the other did not exist. It took 11 days of careful negotiation, 11 days of long hours and short tempers and small breakthroughs, but at the end of it, both sides walked away with an agreement that held far longer than anyone expected. I came home 3 weeks after that. Mira was 12 now, taller than I remembered, standing at the door with a hand-painted sign that still had wet glitter glue dripping slightly at one corner. She threw her arms around me before I had even set down my bag, and my wife, Laura, stood behind her with the kind of smile that carries relief and love in equal measure. That night, over dinner, Mira asked me the same question she always asked when I came home. "Were you very brave out there?" she asked. I told her the same thing I always told her. I told her I was mostly just stubborn, and that stubbornness, used carefully, could sometimes do more good than bravery alone. She laughed at that, the same way she always did, and the sound of it was worth every long night in that quiet corridor. Later, after she had gone to bed, Laura sat beside me on the porch, watching the artificial stars flicker to life across the station dome above us. She did not ask me to describe what had happened out there. She never did. Instead, she simply asked if I was going to be all right. I told her yes, because I intended to be, and because it was true, and because both of those things could exist together, without one canceling out the other. Years later, when my daughter was grown and asking harder questions about the corridor and the ceasefire and the man they still spoke about in old reports with a mixture of caution and respect, I told her something I believed with my whole heart. I told her that a person does not need two separate selves to explain a life like mine. The tenderness she saw at our kitchen table was never a disguise worn to hide the discipline of the corridor, and the discipline of the corridor was never a mask covering some hidden softness underneath. Both were simply me, whole and unhidden, in every room I ever stood in. My enemies learned to respect the version of me they met across a battlefield. My family learned to love the version of me they met across a dinner table. Neither version was smaller or less true than the other, and I never once had to choose between them. That, more than any single fight in that long, quiet corridor, is the part of the story I hope people remember.